Hey everybody, welcome back to Bible Basics. I'm George Willett with the Westport Christian Church, and we are in our study on apologetic evangelism, using the proof, the evidence, the hope that is within us to go out and share the gospel message, the good news of Jesus, the Son of God, with other people. And tonight we're talking about a certain group of people. We had talked about how we're going to talk about some general kinds of people, types of people that we may run into when we're actually going outside of our church buildings and having relationships and trying to, share Jesus with real people. And as I said last week, that when we are talking about generalities, they're good to help us, have a little bit of an understanding, but understand each person is different. And how any of these issues may or may not be affecting them. We've got to be very careful to not try to force people into our preconceived notions. So just be aware and be wondering, what is it this person really needs? How can I best help them? So as always, I want us to remember that when we're talking to people and they ask questions, we're not just answering the question. We're answering a person. I think sometimes Christians can get so excited about information or convincing people that we treat it like a debate, or we treat it like an opportunity to score points instead of just having a relationship and talking one person to another person. And when we have relationships, we're going to be much more likely to be successful in sharing the good news of Jesus. And when we're talking to people, remember that includes their hearts, their fears, their hurts. So if you truly want to be effective in witnessing, and I think this is a problem in much of the church today, people aren't going out and trying to share Jesus with others, and when they do, they're treating it like it's a chore, like it's a job, instead of an opportunity to have a relationship, to get to know someone, to really care about them and desire the best for them. Because that's the kind of situation, that's the relationships that happen that cause transformation. So today we're talking about what I'm going to call the hurting. And again, this is all adapted from a book, Transforming the Neighborhood, Apologetic Evangelism by Dr. Tim Wallingford. You can look that book up and buy it. It's a great book. I am just hitting just a small amount of what he is actually presenting in that book. So when we talk about the hurting, we've got to define terms. So first is, what's the challenge? What are the issue that we're looking for? With hurting, we need to remember that oftentimes pain will distort our perceptions. And spiritually, that pain will often distort a person's understanding about the nature of God, who God is. And we have to be listening very closely to see, do they have a good understanding of the biblical Jesus, of who God has revealed himself to be, or are they seeing the biblical teaching through the lens of pain, which is, of course, going to happen. So definition of hurt. When we hurt someone, or when someone gets hurt, it's because there's something that's caused pain or injury. There's been damage, and oftentimes things that are hurt or damaged, there's decreased efficiency. Like cars that are damaged can't operate the way they should. That's true of people too, that when we're injured, when we're hurting, we don't operate the way we should. And it can decrease the value of something, or at least the perceived value of something. So that's a general definition of hurt. What kind of hurts are we talking about? Listen, this is about people, so it's everything. It's physical, mental, emotional, financial hurts, spiritual hurts. There's relational hurts between different people. And if this hurt is overwhelming, it will get in and affect everything about us. It can be overwhelming and it can be grinding. So when we are dealing with people who their primary concern or their primary issue is that they're hurting. We can say that they are people who are in pain. They've suffered some form of injury or damage, and that sometimes they see themselves as having decreased ability or value. And the truth is, some people do have decreased ability, and we've got to be aware of that and sensitive to that. They can't do some of the things they used to do because of the hurt they're feeling. And that can be frustrating when those of us who don't hurt that way are demanding things of them that are just beyond them at that moment. Okay, some things to remember. Pain demands to be heard. When we want to share Jesus with people, we have to acknowledge the hurt that they're feeling, the pain and the suffering that people are going through before they're going to listen to us. We can't go and demand that they, study the Bible with us and that they hear all of these arguments and that they immediately make a decision when we've not taken the time to listen to them, to understand where they're coming from and how this hurt has affected their lives. And that means, you're going to have to take some time to really listen to them. So if you want to be listened to, you better be willing to listen first. And not just, oh yeah, so you're hurting, that's too bad. Really understand how they're feeling. What is it? What kind of hurt is it? How it's affected their lives. What is the challenges that they face because of what they're going through? Again, whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual, it doesn't matter. We've got to do the work of understanding other people so we can meet them where they're at. And another thing to remember is that hurt people hurt people. I know that's cliche, but the truth is this, that when people are in pain, when they are suffering, when they hurt, they can sometimes talk or act in a way that seems mean or rude or angry. And that means they say things or they do things that will make other people say, okay, they don't deserve or need my help because they're just being angry. They're just upset. We don't want to turn away from people or reject people because they're in pain. And understand maybe there's reasons they're acting the way they are. The other thing is, one of the challenges is when we're ministering to people who are hurting, is that they're oftentimes angry at God for the pain they're in. How could a good God allow this to happen? Why would a good God allow there to be cancer or an accident or other illness or a divorce or a broken relationship with a child or a million other things that people are going through that can make them doubt who God is or see God as someone who's causing the pain? They see him negatively because of what they're going through. And we know that when people are suffering, it affects everything about them. When people are in a lot of hurt, when they're in pain, it's difficult for them to make good decisions. It's difficult for them to be hopeful, to think that things can get better, and they despair. They even despair at being alive. So understand where we're starting with them and not demanding that they stop being angry at God immediately, to not say, well, part of your problem is you don't trust God and think that's going to be helpful. We've got to give them reasons for hope, and we've got to understand where they're at. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to make sense out of the pain they're going through. How do we in this world make sense of pain and suffering, loss and injustice? We're living in a fallen world where it's not the way it's supposed to be. And it seems very unfair. And it seems hopeless sometimes. And we just want to be aware of all of that so that we can not be overwhelmed or afraid of talking with them or interacting with them because we don't know how to handle their feelings. Let people have their feelings and meet them there and listen to them and commiserate. And then slowly we can start presenting evidence. We can start presenting information that may be helpful for them. hurting people will oftentimes want to focus on what they've lost. Whether it's their physical health, whether it's the thought of losing their life, whether it is lost relationships, opportunities, their comfort, whatever, pain takes over every aspect of your life. And I know that I've sat in hospital rooms with people who are terminally ill. And if the doctors and nurses are not successful in treating that pain, that's all their life is. And they can't think about the past. They can't think about anything good. They can't think of anything to give them hope. They're just wanting the pain to stop. And we need to be respectful of that and honoring to what people go through so that we can share Jesus with them. So what can we do? Well, once we've talked to them, once we've developed a relationship, once we understand where they're coming from and honor that and acknowledge that, we can help show them and experience God's love for them through our sincere relationship with them. People don't like feeling like they're a project. Like I'm paying attention to them only because I want to check off another person in the church. Okay, we gained another one and that's it. When they see us loving them in the name of Christ, when this relationship, this family that God's invited us into really is one of respect and love and care, that's transformative. It's showing the redemptive power of God. And we need to spend more time building relationships than having a better argument. We need to help show them that there could be a bigger picture for the cause, the purpose, and the solution to pain. So they can understand and put pain in perspective as far as if you believe in God, if you believe in Jesus and what the Bible teaches, that there is more to life than the pain they're suffering. There's a reason why there is pain and suffering and loss in the world, and that God can work redemptively in that. So again, we'll help show them the cause of pain and suffering, how God's original plan was for this perfect world and perfect relationships and bodies that wouldn't break down and relationships that would be not just whole but also holy, relationships that would build us up, that the problems we face now is not what God intended originally, and that all suffering for the believer is temporary, that for those who have put their hope and their faith in Jesus, we know that there's going to come a point when suffering is done away with, where pain is done, where death is done, where relationships are restored. And that can be, again, helpful for many people in understanding a way forward in the pain that they're going through. We can help people see that there can be a bigger plan for our lives, that what we think is going on, that what we want for our own lives, that God has a plan that's bigger than we can even imagine. And that God can use our pain and our suffering for His glory, but also for our good. And there's a story in Genesis, a guy named Joseph, and he is he's the second to the youngest son of 12 sons, the 12 tribes of Israel. And those of you who are believers have heard this. You'll remember that his brothers hated him and they threw him in a pit. They were going to kill him. They end up putting him in slavery in Egypt. He goes to Egypt. He becomes a house slave, and then he is thrown in jail because the guy's wife lies about him and accuses him of abusing her. He's thrown into prison. He's there for years. He gets out. He becomes the second most important person in Egypt underneath the Pharaoh. And because of a famine, his brothers who threw him in the pit, who sold him into slavery, then come to him not knowing who he is. He saves them because of the position he's in, brings his father and his brothers and their families all down into Egypt. And after their father dies, the brothers are terrified that Joseph is going to take his revenge. And in Genesis chapter 50, he says, don't be afraid of me. What you intended for my harm, God intended for my good. And because he sent me here, I've been able to save all of you. Look at all the people that have been saved because of what happened all those years before. That again, there can be redemption in suffering. There can be something, not that God causes it, but that God can use every circumstances we have for his glory and for the comfort of other people. We need to help show hurting people to not just know but experience that God is caring and he's involved in every aspect of their lives, even and especially in their suffering. I'll take a second to share my journey. In 2014, I was diagnosed with bladder cancer. Started going through treatments, surgeries, some chemo treatments, and from that point on, I've had a number of surgeries. The bladder cancer always kind of comes back. So you're trying to maintain it, you're trying to manage it, and in it, I'm praying that through all of the stuff that I'm going through, that God can be glorified and other people can receive comfort. That's a good thing that comes from suffering. How did Jesus see people, especially hurting people? We know that he healed the sick, that he went and he touched people that everyone else rejected, that he served people, that he noticed people. Noticing the hurting can be a powerful way of building relationships. And in Matthew 9, it talks all about all these healings that he does. But at the end, it says this: he sees the people, he looks out on the crowds, and he felt compassion for them because they were distressed and dispirited like sheep without a shepherd. That is the call. That's the call that we as believers have, looking at people who are hurting, to see them, to notice them, to have empathy and compassion, to take the comfort that Jesus has given us and to go and be a comfort to other people. So again, I just wanted this to be a thing tonight where we're thinking our way through when we're talking to people. If we truly want to share Jesus, we might need to know if they're going through things. And what are the challenges that are before them that are preventing them from accepting Jesus? And I'll tell you, think about it. In your neighborhood, in your town, in your family, do you think there are people who are hurting? Do you think there are people who need to be comforted and to cared for and to be loved on? And if we did that, do you think we could share Jesus just a little bit better? All right, well, thank you very much, and we will talk to you next week. God bless.